Hello there, good afternoon and good day to all of you risibly bereft and mindless perverts who tune into my videos and watch them because you've got nothing else better to do with your life, or maybe because you find them interesting. Who knows? I do it mainly for therapeutic purposes, and I don't really get very many views, so I mean, it doesn't really matter whether they're any good or not. You ever been hypnotised? Happens to people all the time, and it's a really prevalent thing in society. Actually, not everybody supposedly is susceptible to it, but there's different methodologies of putting somebody into a hypnotic trance, and I've done some research about it. I'm just going to read you the research, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. The functional disassociation of memory retrieval, a neurocognitive analysis of hypnotic amnesia and post-hypnotic recollection. So there is some people who can remember what happens under hypnotic trance states, and some people who can't. I don't know if it's a fringe subject or if it's something which is kind of connected to the occult in some way, but yeah, I think it's quite relevant, really. The introduction reads, defining post-hypnotic amnesia, PHA, and historical precedent. Post-hypnotic amnesia is defined as the functional inability following a hypnotic trance to consciously recall specific events, thoughts, or actions that transpired either during the hypnotic session or occasionally certain materials learned immediately prior to the induction. This phenomenon is not merely passive forgetting, but rather the result of an active, highly targeted suggestion given while the individual is under hypnosis. The historical documentation of post-hypnotic amnesia dates back to the late 18th century. Marquis de Puisieux first observed this spontaneous amnesia in 1784 with his subject Victor, who established complete memory loss for the session upon emergence from the trance state. Recognizing the therapeutic potential of this effect, he subsequently began using induced amnesia in treatment. Later, 19th century researchers categorized post-hypnotic amnesia as a defining feature of the hypnotic experience. French physician, God, I'm not good at French, Ambrose Auguste Lebeau, that wasn't very difficult, was it, I suppose, characterised PHA as a symptom whose degree varied with the depth of the hypnotism, particularly linking it to the deep trance state of somnambulism as studied by neurologist Jean-Martin Charcot. I said that in a French accent when I didn't need to, maybe. Fundamental cognitive principle governing PHA is that the suggestion disrupts the retrieval process of memory, distinguishing it critically from a failure of initial encoding or permanent memory storage. This mechanism renders the amnesia phenomenologically similar to functional or psychogenic amnesias observed in clinical dissociative disorders. If the stored memory trace were truly destroyed or unable to be encoded, the recognition or implicit processing would be impossible. However, because post-hypnotic amnesia targets the active, conscious retrieval pathways, the integrity of the stored information is confirmed, indicating that the mechanism operates as a functional inhibition of top-down access system. Part 1b, Typology and Measurement of Hypnotic Amnesia. Post-hypnotic amnesia can be categorized based on the method of intuition and the specific type of retrieval failure observed. So, while spontaneous amnesia was first documented by that guy, the modern studies primarily focused on suggested amnesia achieved through explicit instruction given during hypnosis to forget certain material. Post-hypnotic amnesia manifests across dimensions of explicit memory failure, providing insight into the selective nature of the retrieval disruption. Recall amnesia. So this is the ability to voluntarily access and describe information or events. For instance, subjects are unable to detail the sequence of activities performed since they initially laid down for the session. Empirical testing demonstrates the efficacy of this, with some studies showing nearly 100% suppression for certain memory tasks, such as a recall of word associations learned during the trance. Recognition amnesia. This involves the failure to recognize material or faces previously encountered, even when presented again after the trance. So source amnesia. This subject remains the content of a memory but fails to recall the content or source in which the information was acquired. Crucial distinction within the study of post-hypnotic amnesia lies in the spared capacity for implicit memory. It exclusively targets explicit or conscious memory retrieval, leaving implicit memory such as priming effects or learned skills largely intact. This sparing of implicit processes is why subjects experiencing PHA may retain the ability they cannot consciously recall. The ability to recognize material without recalling its content or specific details highlights that memory trace itself remains preserved, and the amnesia is purely a functional suppression of the mechanisms necessary for conscious access. Cognitive architecture of amnesia induction, maybe. The initial suggestion and bypass of the critical facility. The initiation of hypnotic amnesia is predicated upon the successful establishment of a state of heightened suggestibility. All types of hypnotic inductions aim to achieve what noted hypnotist Dave Ellman termed selective thinking. This state facilitates the functional bypassing of the mind's conceptual critical faculty, which serves as the intellectual firewall normally responsible for filtering, evaluating, and preventing external information or influence from entering the deeper cognitive structures. By manoeuvring around this critical faculty, the hypnotist can implant the post-hypnotic instruction to forget, which then operates as a powerful command to inhibit subsequent memory retrieval attempts upon emergence from the trance. I've just no idea how that works. I think I've been hypnotized maliciously and abused quite a few times in my life, but I just don't know how, really, without having some sort of superpower, how it works, But the memory block established by this command is notably not state dependent. Subjects cannot recover the memory simply by being placed back under hypnosis. This lack of state dependence suggests that the amnesia is maintained by a persistent post-hypnotic cognitive set, an active process of inhibition that must be maintained non-consciously until the prearranged override command, the retrieval cue, is executed. The strength of the suggestion is such that it establishes a response set that actively maintains the absence of memory until permission to cease is given. Competing theoretical frameworks and the drive for rapprochement. It's an interesting word. I know what reproachable means, but I've never heard rapprochements like that. Understanding the cognitive mechanism behind post-hypnotic amnesia has historically involved two competing yet increasingly divergent theoretical frameworks. The dissociation theory traditionally holds that hypnosis causes a functional split or compartmentalization of consciousness or executive control. Under this model, the suggested information, the memory trace remains intact, but is temporarily sequestered and rendered inaccessible to the main conscious operating system. In contrast, socio-cognitive theory, often represented by the response set theory, views hypnotic responses as goal-directed, highly motivated actions. According to this framework, amnesia is not a breakdown of consciousness, but an adoption of a specific response set, the cognitive goal to fulfill the suggestion and forget, driven by positive experiences and compliance. A significant development in the field has been the modern synthesis rapprochement. Researchers acknowledge that recent progress in socio-cognitive theory, particularly concerning response set models, along with advances in cognitive psychology related to non-conscious information processing and goal-directed action, has enabled a theoretical bridge between these previously rival accounts. The conversion centers on the concept of highly efficient inhibitory executive control. So cognitive mechanisms of high suggestibility. The implementation of successful hypnotic amnesia strongly correlated with an individual's level of suggestibility. Highly suggestible individuals appear to process information more automatically and may possess executive attention networks that operate with superior efficiency compared to their low suggestible counterparts. Key mechanism bridging the socio-cognitive goal, the intention to forget, and the dissociative outcome, its retrieval, is the superior cognitive ability to inhibit competing processes. The effectiveness of the hypnotic command depends on whether the highly suggestible individual is better equipped to inhibit unwanted thoughts and counterproductive response sets, such as inhibiting the natural spontaneous urge to recall the material that's been learned. Thus, both the goal-orientated action, socio-cognitive element, and the functional restriction of access, dissociative element, rely fundamentally on superior inhibitory control mechanisms that are utilized under the direction of the hypnotic command. Furthermore, the retrieval disruption characteristic of post-hypnotic amnesia appears specifically linked to a failure in strategic cue utilization. Data suggests that effective retrieval cues, particularly those related to the temporal sequence of events, may not be utilized successfully during the amnesia phase compared to a normal waking state. Since temporal coding is crucial for organized contextual memory retrieval, the hypnotic suggestion functionally disrupts the strategic employment of these cues, leading to the observed breakdown in recollection. Neurobiological mechanisms of retrieval suppression. The functional nature of hypnotic amnesia is understood by robust neurobiological evidence demonstrating transient, specific modulation of memory retrieval circuits in the brain. Executive control inhibition and pre-retrieval monitoring. Neuroimaging studies have identified the critical role of prefrontal and frontal cortices in executing the amnesia command. Hypnotic amnesia primarily affects the executive pre-retrieval monitoring processes. This process, localized in the prefrontal cortex, normally performs an early assessment determining whether or not to initiate a full-scale retrieval attempt from a long-term memory. During the amnesia phase, the hypnotic suggestion acts as a command to abort this monitoring process early in the retrieval sequence. By halting this executive gatekeeping function, suppression prevents the necessary activation of downstream cortical regions required for productive conscious recall. Transient, reversible suppression of these specific brain circuits in healthy, highly susceptible individuals provides an invaluable model for studying retrieval failure without the confounding factors such as structural damage, which often characterize pathological conditions like amnesia stemming from lesions in the prefrontal cortex temporal lobe, or indeed the hippocampus. The upper alpha gating hypothesis, functional dissociation at the network level. The most detailed mechanism identified for hypnotic amnesia involves alterations in cortical oscillations, particularly in the upper alpha band. That's about 10 to 12 hertz. Failure to recall recent experiences under hypnotic amnesia is attributed to the inhibition of processing at key neural nodes through the upper alpha activity, which is known as the gating mechanism, selectively inhibiting local information processing at critical retrieval points. Sorry, I didn't have a very good night's sleep last night. It's 20 to 1. I'm still very feel very drowsy. For highly susceptible participants experiencing amnesia, specific neurophysiological signatures are observed. Inhibition of executive regions. There is a significant increase in evoked upper alpha activity within the right Brodmann area 7, BA7, to the superior parietal lobule. Since BA7 mediates top-down executive control necessary for visual recall, the surge in inhibitory alpha activity suggests a functional shutdown of the executive guidance system required for accessing the target memory. Functional network dissociation, analysis of lagged non-linear connectivity, phase synchronization, as it's otherwise simplified as known, or referred to as that in the upper alpha band, reveals significantly increased connectivity between key functional nodes. Specifically, phase synchronized upper alpha is observed linking the right Brodmann area 3-4, BA34, to the parahippocampal gyrus, a region essential for recent memory consolidation and recall. So with BAS 7, 20 and 22, cortical areas necessary for integrated processing. The integration and coordination of activity along these specific regions are crucial for successful recall. The increased synchronization in the inhibitory upper alpha band effectively suppresses the integrated functioning of this network, thereby preventing memory access. This mechanism provides neurobiological correlate for the functional dissociation theorized by psychological models, demonstrating how the suggestion implements a reversible frequency-specific block that prevents critical memory nodes from communicating effectively. The transient and induced nature of amnesia is strongly confirmed by the observation that the specific inhibitory patterns of upper alpha activity and synchronization are likely absent after the amnesia suggestion is lifted, i.e. after the cue is administered. Post-hypnotic recollection, mechanism of retrieval reinstatement. So that's a very different topic. So post-hypnotic recollection refers to the partial or total return of memories that were previously inaccessible due to the amnesia suggestion. The nature of reversal and the role of the cue. The amnesia induced by hypnosis is functional, meaning the memory trace remains stored awaiting access. While subjects cannot recover the memory by re-entering the hypnotic state, they will recover the memory when presented with a prearranged reversal cue. This cue acts as an override command to the post-hypnotic instruction, instantaneously terminating the active inhibition that's been maintaining the retrieval. Prevention. The cue functions as an effective on-off switch for the underlying cognitive and neural response set. The precision, measurability and high controllability of this reversal process makes post-hypnotic amnesia an invaluable model for studying retrieval-specific cognitive inhibition, offering unique insights into how pathological functional amnesias or retrieval suppression mechanisms such as those observed in trauma might be addressed therapeutically. Neurophysiological reinstatement. The cognitive reversal triggered by the cue is directly mirrored by neurological reinstatement. Studies of highly susceptible individuals show that the reversal of the post-hypnotic suggestion results in a paralleled recovery of brain activity and memory performance. The retrieval reinstatement involves the reactivation of circuits that were previously suppressed. The activity recovers in the occipital, temporal and prefrontal areas that were functionally inhibited during the amnesia phase. This indicates that the frontal lobe's executive abort mechanism, which has been actively preventing the retrieval process, is lifted by the command. Confirming the mechanism, the inhibitory pattern defined by increased upper alpha synchronization between the parahippocampal gyrus, B34, and the associated executive regions, BA7, BA20, BA22, entirely dissipates after the reversal cue is applied. The lifting of the inhibitory alpha gating allows the previously dissociated functional network to reintegrate, enabling productive memory retrieval to resume. Critical analysis and forensic implications of hypnotically influenced memory. A comprehensive analysis of hypnotic memory modulation must contain the relative efficacy of hypnotic inhibition with that demonstrated unreliability of hypnotic enhancement or hypomnesia. That's another good word, isn't it? The reliability crisis, hypnotic hypomnesia and pseudo-memories. While the PHA demonstrates the ability of suggestion to achieve powerful, transient and reliable memory suppression, efforts to use hypnosis to improve or restore memory are overwhelmingly problematic. Hypnotic amnesia, defined as the suggestion of improved memory for past events, has been empirically determined to be illusory. The critical danger of hyperamnesia suggestions is their tendency to significantly increase false recollection errors. So furthermore, these suggestions inflate the subject's confidence in both their genuine memories and their newly generated false memories. This confidence inflation makes it empirically impossible to discriminate accurately between true recollection and manufactured content following the procedure. This inherent unreliability demonstrates a fundamental asymmetry. Hypnosis is demonstrably effective at enforcing inhibitory executive commands, the functional forget button, but it is critically compromised when attempting to overcome genuine memory limitations, the recall better button. The state enables control, but simultaneously compromises the critical self-monitoring necessary for accurate recall, directly leading to contamination. The risk of confabulation and pseudo-memory creation. The use of hypnosis for memory recovery carries significant ethical and forensic risks due to the production of confabulations and pseudo-memories. Individuals under hypnosis are highly motivated to comply with the hypnotist's expectations and roles, which often results in them filling memory gaps with fantasized material rather than accurately accessing lost memories. Major medical and scientific bodies have cautioned against the reliability of such recollections. The Council on Scientific Affairs for the American Medical Association holds that recollections obtained during hypnosis involve confabulations and pseudo-memories that are definitively less reliable than non-hypnotic recall. The danger compounds post-hypnosis. False impressions and suggested details generated during the trance become fixed as true in the witness's memory, resulting in a witness who is unshakable under cross-examination. This artificially inflated certainty in potentially false memories presents a profound threat to the judicial process. Historically, attempts to recover alleged repressed memories using suggestion techniques have led to the creation of entirely false memories, resulting in substantial harm, including false accusations and unjust incarceration. Ethical and legal considerations. Due to the proven capacity of hypnosis to contaminate memory, the clinical and forensic use of both hypomnesia and hypnotic age regression to enhance memory in patients, victims, or witnesses is strongly encouraged. Hypnotic age regression, which is sometimes employed, is also unreliable. While subjectively powerful, does not achieve a true revivification of memory or the abolition of adult memory functions. Rather, it stimulates a childlike state, resulting in memories prone to contamination and high unwarranted confidence. In legal context, testimony tainted by hypnosis often fails to meet strictest, whatever it says behind this fucking thing, scientific reliability standards required for the admissibility of scientific evidence. For example, the Frye standard. The overwhelming logical conclusion derived from scientific data is that previously hypnotized witnesses should be deemed incompetent to testify rather than regarding matters discussed during the hypnotic session due to the irredeemable contamination and fixation of false confidence. Conclusion, synthesis and future research directions. VIA. I think that means 6 part A, if you're not an ignoramus like me. The cycle of hypnotic memory modulation. Hypnotic memory modulation is best synthesized as a highly efficient, transient and reversible functional dissociation of the neural networks governing explicit memory retrieval. The process operates through a coordinated sequence. Induction to the critical faculty is bypassed, allowing for the stable implementation of post-hypnotic inhibition command. The 2, suppression. The command is executed by the prefrontal cortex, which initiates an executive abort of the retrieval monitoring process. At the network level, this is implemented via increased upper alpha activity, leading to phase synchronization, alpha gating between the parahippocampal gyrus and the executive control regions, thereby functionally disassociating with critical network. Amnesia manifestation. This result is a retrieval failure that spares implicit memory but blocks conscious strategic access to the target information. Recollection. Presentation of a prearranged cue terminates the inhibitory response set, lifting the executive abort mechanisms and instantly reversing the neural synchronization, leading to full reinstatement of memory function. Awesome. 6b, unanswered questions and final implications. While the neurobiology of memory suppression through hypnotic suggestion is increasingly understood through the alpha gating hypothesis, several fundamental theoretical questions remain critical for future investigation. Researchers must precisely determine what initiates and terminates the response sets required for the amnesia to begin and end. Furthermore, continued research is necessary to identify the functional differences beyond general executive efficiency that allow highly suggestible individuals to implement these profound inhibitory commands so effortlessly compared to their low suggestible counterparts. Finally, the generalizability of these neural findings, currently derived primarily from specific visual recall tasks, for example, face recognition, must be tested against more complex, real-world episodic memory retrieval scenarios. In summary, hypnotic amnesia provides an uniquely powerful, controllable and reversible model for elucidating the mechanisms of functional amnesia and cognitive inhibition in the healthy brain. However, the scientific clarity regarding PHA must be rigorously separated from the proven dangers of hypnotic memory enhancement, which generates illusory recollections and artificially inflates confidence, posing severe risks when applied in a therapeutic or forensic context. It's giving me sources, it doesn't normally do that. Loads of websites. And thoughts. It can tell you there's thoughts. You can read all that shit if you want. I can't be asked. Have a good day, innit? Thanks for watching. Don't get hypnotised and abused by anyone. It's really depressing if you have flashbacks and stuff.